This is Sarah Squires bringing you behind the headlines in today's edition of WyoToday Newsroom. Today's show is sponsored by Porter's Mountain View Supply. If you're getting ready for winter or you're already feeling that Wyoming cold, Porter's Mountain View Supply is the place to stop. They specialize in wood stoves and pellet stoves. They help homeowners find the right heating solution for their space. And it's not just the stoves. They carry pellet fuel, stovepipe and venting, chimney components, and all the accessories you need, from stove tools and gloves to cleaners and maintenance supplies. What really sets Porter's apart is the service. Their knowledgeable team takes the time to explain your options and make sure you leave with something that works for your home, not a one-size-fits-all solution. You'll find Porter's Mountain View Supply at 750 East Sunset Drive in Riverton, or you can give them a call at 307-856-6066 or stop in and talk with the team today. Today on the show, I am joined by senior reporter Marit Gookin. Welcome, Marit, to WyoToday Newsroom. I know you've been on the show before.
I sure have. Thanks for having me back, though, Sarah. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I always love when we have Marit on because it gives us the chance to kind of deliver on that promise of taking you behind the headlines. And we kind of give you the insight into the biggest stories that we're working on here in our WyoToday Newsroom. Marit, the first thing I wanted to go over here, I think, is kind of a timely topic, and it has to do with kind of the avalanche forecast and something to keep in mind for folks who are trying to get out there and enjoy this beautiful weather. What is the latest for the avalanche forecast for the region?
Yeah, so this is the avalanche forecast from Sunday. The Bridger-Teton Avalanche Center puts out a daily forecast, but when we're recording this, the Monday forecast hasn't quite come out yet, so if you want the latest and greatest, be sure to go to their website. But Sunday, they were forecasting dangerous avalanche conditions on Togety. They said, it's likely that the weight of a rider would trigger an avalanche on steep wind-loaded slopes. And so, just this weekend, a skier triggered an avalanche near Teton Pass. As far as we know, everyone was okay at this point. I know there was a partial burial, but it sounds like no fatalities, so people are doing okay, but it really highlights that importance of being safe when you're out in the backcountry. And, the Bridger-Teton Avalanche Center is a free website. You can go there every single day. They've got the forecast for you. And they also appreciate hearing from folks who have been out in the backcountry saying, hey, I saw this or that, so they can incorporate that into their forecast. Yeah, so a really valuable resource for us here in the area. But, thinking about that skier and, a partial burial and potential injuries has me thinking about health, of course, which makes me think about some reporting that you've done this week, Sarah, about a completely different kind of health issue that we're seeing come up here in Fremont County.
Yeah. So we are learning more about 5 measles cases that were reported here in Fremont County. And that's kind of a lump, and officials are telling us that it's part of the same kind of spread. So these are related cases. And it sounds as though we're able to kind of determine that the exposure to measles, that initial exposure that kind of started this chain reaction here of transmission, occurred outside of the state. So one thing that we do know is that there is a point of potential exposure that we want to warn people about. It was on December 1st at the Flying J Travel Center in Evanston between 2:30 and 5 p.m. Now, one thing to keep in mind, I know that was a while back here. We're kind of staring down Christmas here, but measles typically takes a while for folks to start developing symptoms. So that could be up to a week or so. So definitely want to keep that in mind if you've got, a family member who is ill. Officials tell us that, if you suspect that someone in your home has measles, or you yourself even has measles, you really want to stay home. Don't go out and about. Keep the folks in your home as well too. Because there's such a long time before people start experiencing symptoms. We want to make sure that we're not kind of out there spreading before we become symptomatic. It can be up to 21 days, Marit, before you start feeling sick with the measles virus. So some of the symptoms to look out for are a high fever, and officials tell us that you could spike to even more than 104 degrees, and that's pretty dangerous territory. So there's also cough, runny nose, red and or watery eyes, and a rash that typically starts to break out about 3 or 5 days after symptoms begin. So if you kind of look at the time frame here, we're looking at December 1st. Sometimes it can take 20 days or something to start being symptomatic, and you might not have that kind of signature rash until a few days after that. So we definitely want to make sure that people keep on top of this news. We definitely don't want to spread this around, especially as we're gathering together for the holidays. So what you ought to do, is if you need to go, to see a healthcare provider, if you need to go to the hospital, if you've got, maybe a little one who's sick and you're kind of concerned, make sure you call ahead and just let the hospital know, hey, I've got some concerns about measles and I'm coming in there. I want you to be prepared for me. And that way they can kind of get things ready and kind of usher you in there without, potentially exposing other people at the hospital to what could be the measles. So the other thing that officials advise is also, give our public health officers a call and see what you might be able to learn. If you think you might be getting sick, if you're saying, hey, you know what, I'm not quite sure whether I've been vaccinated or what's going on with that, give Fremont County Public Health a call. The number for those offices here in Riverton, you can call 856-6979. In Lander, you can call 332-1073. So definitely something we want to keep on top of here, especially with that super delayed time frame for experiencing symptoms. So with those 5 cases that we've got here in Fremont County, that brings the state's total for the year to 14. So quite a little chunk of that year total that we're experiencing right now here in Fremont County. Now, Marit, I know that's probably not the most exciting or welcome news here, and I don't know that we have the most happy Christmas program in the world here, but I know there's one thing that you've been working on really hard the last few days here that has kind of generated a lot of discussion, and it has to do with some changes at the Lander Pet Connection. And it's quite an involved story, but hoping you can kind of give us the highlights here and let us know what's going on.
Yeah. So it's a little complicated of a story, so I really advise for folks who are interested, pick up a copy of the newspaper and read the story in full here. But kind of the highlight reel is, we had some staff at the Pet Connection reach out to us to let us know that a large percentage of staff were on strike or had resigned. And we heard from the executive director of the Lander Pet Connection, Hannah McGregor, that the Lander Pet Connection board had let her go and just verbally informed her of this, it sounds like. And so Sunday we saw some folks standing on Main Street in Lander holding signs in relation to that strike. And, we had also reached out to the board to hear their side of things. And if you want to read their statement, we have it printed in full in the weekend paper. So you can get their side of the story, or as much of it as they would give us. So.
Yeah, definitely check out the Lander Journal if you want to learn more about what's going on at the Lander Pet Connection. It's kind of a complicated story, so one worth really checking out in full. Now, before we go here, Marit, I know there's kind of a timeline crunch here, but one of the articles that I was really interested in has to do with the Endangered Species Act and kind of a comment period that ends today. So if folks folks are listening here on Monday and they want to provide some feedback or some input on what's going on with this, now is the time to do it. So roll it out for us, Marit. What's going on?
Yeah, so we have the Fish and Wildlife Service and National Marine Fisheries Service are looking at some rule changes to how they go about interpreting, enforcing, making decisions around the Endangered Species Act. So, we've got some pretty significant changes in the works, but most of them are pretty similar to some language that was first put into place in 2019 and then removed in 2024, and now we're looking at putting that back into effect. So it's a little bit of a yo-yo situation going on here. You can go ahead and if you go to regulations.gov, you can review all those proposed changes and submit some comments, weigh in on what you think the agencies could do. Say, yes, I think this is great, or no, I think this is bad. Folks, for these agencies, they really appreciate when you give a reason as well. So I think this is good because, I think this is bad because of XYZ things. I think it's very helpful for them to think about the ramifications of any changes they're making, for good or for bad, if you kind of spell out why you think it's good or bad, instead of just saying, yes, I like this, or no, I don't. So again, that's going to be at regulations.gov. And if you just search endangered species, it should pop up for you.
Yeah, definitely a timely topic here. And, I think one thing I really appreciate here about Wyoming is, how many people here really embrace the role of being a steward of both the outdoors and wildlife in general. And, here's your chance. We've got experts out there, but we're also here on the ground and, really part of our wildlife. And, this is our chance to kind of lift our voices up and let officials know what we prefer, what the changes that we'd like to see here on the ground. So absolutely a wonderful opportunity. If you are interested in kind of reading a little bit more about the details on that, make sure you check out the weekend edition of The Ranger. Now, Marit, I wanted to thank you so much for joining me today and kind of giving us the behind-the-scenes look at some of these important stories going on. Once again, always a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks so much for taking the time to talk today, Sarah. And for all our folks listening, be sure to think about, as you're thinking through last-minute stocking stuffers, a subscription to the Atlanta Journal, the Ranger, the Wind River News. We do a lot of in-depth local reporting, and we also love to hear from our subscribers about what they want to hear about.
Absolutely. It is a gift that keeps on giving. You'll get the latest news. You'll get opportunities to be involved, how to weigh in on local government and some of these important decisions going on. And absolutely a wonderful way to be a little bit more connected to our community here in Fremont County. Thanks so much, Marit.